Ladies and gentlemen, the program is in this fold. We would have an overview of the advertising industry, which will be delivered by Mrs. Ekuya Nate, who is the chairperson of our Talent and Development Committee of the Advertising Association of Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we receive Ekuya Nate?
There are a lot of protocols to be observed, so I'll take the excuse and say all protocols observed and go straight into the discussion. When you think about it, for most people, when you are in secondary school and you are asked what do you want to be, a lot of people will talk about wanting to be a lawyer, wanting to be a doctor, or would say that they want to be a pilot. And there are very few people who talk about wanting to go into advertising or even understand what advertising is. In the creative team, you would have all sorts of people. You have designers, you have writers, you have a planner who's thinking about the strategy, you have client service people who are the go-between the agency and the client. Then a big part of communication for us in agencies is PR. So PR is dominantly about showing positive sides of an organization to the public. And there's also an element of managing crises. But overall, it's about giving companies what I call social license to operate. So if you take big companies like a Tallow or a Cosmos Oil, or even telcos, there's a lot of negative feedback about these organizations. And one big part is being able to show a positive side of that business to the outside world, just so that they have that social license to operate in terms of having consumer feedback and being able to get people to credibly buy into what their operations are. Then there is a big part, which is most of you know about, which is digital. Now, in our part of the world, digital is dominantly social media. So it's the Instagrams, the WhatsApps, the Facebook, it's LinkedIn, and so on. But there's a whole side of digital which is not very, very prevalent on our part of the continent, which is things like artificial intelligence, which is things like the apps and the website development and so on. They are here, but they are not here to the level that it might be in developed markets. But you find that a lot of brands are now on social media, and so agencies are beginning to develop digital capabilities to be able to communicate to consumers through digital. Another big part is media, and Andrew will talk about media as the conversation progresses. But you know, when we create the beautiful work that between Russell and I we create, what you find is somebody needs to put it on TV3, and somebody needs to put it on Metro TV or Joy FM or Adom FM. Now, the truth is, experiential is the sexiest part of advertising. And what you find is that it's about creating experiences that consumers can connect with. And that is what Aziz and his team will do. Then it's like, you know, Coca-Cola has all of these experiences that they do all the time. If you go on YouTube, you realize that in developed markets, there's always one thing or the other. And it's a team of people who actually think about it and come up with those ideas and implement those ideas. Then there is Shopper. Shopper is not as well developed in this part of the world as it is in some parts of the world. The experiences you have in the shop, so the sales, little deals and so on, are all part of shopper marketing, which are a big part of advertising, not traditional advertising, but marketing communication. So these are some of the highlights when you think about advertising and when you think about marketing communication as a big bet that you would find jobs in. And in each of these sectors, there are so many jobs. You have people who do user experience, you have people who design, you have people who produce, you have people, so there are so many opportunities within the advertising industry. And as we go through this conversation, my colleagues here will talk about some of those things, but you realize that there is so much more to being a doctor, there's so much more to being a lawyer, and there are more opportunities out there. So that would be my introduction, just giving you a bit of a sneak peek into what the world of marketing communication has to offer. And then we'll get into the conversations. Cool.
So moving straight into our panelists and other contributors. The first is Andrew Aka, CEO of Gentle Ages Network. The next person is Russell, is a very astute, very reserved, incognito, CEO and creative director of Incel Communications. Now, he offers traditional digital and production services. The third panelist, ladies and gentlemen, is our brother, but Aziz is a CEO of ESP Ghana, and is an activation and experiential company. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll hand over to your panelists, and then we will start from Andrew. So over to you, Andrew. Let's put our hands together as Andrew takes us through.
I continue from a career because I also suffered the same plight of my mother telling me I have to be a pilot and engineer. And when I was about to go to the university, fortunately, I chanced upon this advertising business because there was no job to do. And, I was introduced to this agency called MediaCom. Go and do something, and then see how it works out. It looked quite lucrative. I got to the agency and I didn't have any sense of, this is a big place, this is an exciting place. But count 14, 15 years, I think that when any of you guys walk into our agencies, you would feel at home and you have that sense that this is an industry that, that actually works. My field, which is media, which Akua doesn't think is sexy, I find it very sexy because it is quite intellectually stimulating. And the reason why that is you need to understand consumers. Consumer behavior and understanding is quite intriguing because there are patterns. Consumers behave in a certain way, and they act in a certain way, and they respond in a certain way. And certain groups of people would watch a certain media or like a certain activity. And all of this, imagine you're selling to 2 million people, right? You need to understand the aggregation of all their behavior, what they do, and how they think. So you cluster them into three. What do you call their demographics, their age, gender, where they come from, and all of that. They look at their psychographics, their attitudes, what pushes them, and you look at their interest, because consumers buy based on their interest and they buy based on all these things. Once we gather all this information, we go through what we call deriving insights, right? You need to understand the consumer. You need to understand the brand itself, right? Every brand is like a person, okay? So a brand has certain attributes. A brand wants to portray a certain message. So again, you need to understand that every brand behaves a certain way in a certain market. So the way telcos behave is different from the way alcoholic beverages behave. Again, you need to understand the entire industry, how they make money, how they behave, and all of that. Again, you need to understand media, how they interact with media. If you look at a typical media agency, there are various career opportunities in there. We have 4 companies out of we have about 60 of them. You have people who are strategic thinkers, so they think through, they mine all the data and come up with strategies. Then you have planners, Akua talked about them. They are the number crunchers. If you love numbers, that's the place to be, because you're supposed to now put the strategy into a plan. And then you have buyers, those who would actually, go to media owners and negotiate. I mean, we have to make money, right? So between the client and the media owner, we are in the middle. So we need to negotiate to make sure that we are earning enough, passing some to client, and also keeping the local fuel that will make us also move around. You have your implementation buys. You have quite a number of them. You might think that accountancy and all of that is not needed in businesses like ours. But out of the 60, you have 10 of them being accountants, including the finance director. So there's quite a bit of there's quite a bit of jobs within the media industry that you can tap into. And I believe that as time goes on, you realize that it's a lucrative place to be. So think not like a pilot or a doctor. There isn't much money in there nowadays. But come to us, and we'll teach you how to fish.
I don't blame anyone for choosing banking or being or medicine. These are jobs that you come into contact with every day. The doctor provides you health, the pilot flies you to places, the driver drives you. So these are jobs that you come into contact with every day. But when you watch television and you watch the adverts, or you pick up your phone and you get content, you don't think of the people who are behind that. It's not your fault. They're not people you come into contact with. Advertising has changed a lot since the time I stumbled into it. You'll find that a lot of people stumble into it because, again, We're not in touch with these people behind the scenes. And you will find, and it's changed a lot. Back then, there was just radio, television, billboards. But now, this new thing that has come, digital. Every day you wake up in the morning, you go look for your information that you'd usually find in the papers or on television or on radio. It's all in one little device. It's changed the way we behave. And sometimes we're not even aware. I mean, someone spoke about experience. Now, brands that deliver experiences are the brands that are going to succeed. Okay, so like Uber, for instance. Uber has an app, okay, that delivers the service to you. Okay, Nike looks at the health of people. You have Nike Plus, you have an app. So it's selling the shoes to say that's a solution to your health needs, okay, or your fitness needs. So advertising has changed quite a bit and how we approach it. Advertising has changed a lot. Back in the day, I mean, advertising they talk about 360 campaigns, so which would cover, again, television, radio, and newspaper, and outdoor. But now, in-house, we call it 365, okay? Digital is the new 5. And so what we try to do is that we try to look at every product and see how we can design our campaigns to fit into this, not just to deliver the media, but how do you access it? How do you have an experience? Like I mentioned, Uber, it's here. I mean, hailing a cab, you stop by the road, you call the cab, you could pick up a phone and call it, but now it gives you a little more, okay, through the device. And now industry is looking for people like you. We are starved of people. The people that should be in advertising are working in banks. Andrew would have been a bank teller by now. They're working in hospitals. They're looking at the general everyday. But I tell you what, the future is not there. The future is here. Even the apps are replacing doctors. So, and the people behind the apps that are advertising are people like you, some of you sitting in this room, who will be the future influencers, okay? The people who will design the language of brands and push them to people. The machines don't do it by themselves. We need human beings to do that. We need copywriters, we need designers, even the phones. Design is all around you. We don't notice it unless it was a fashion designer or, no. The guy who designed the Apple or the Samsung is somebody working in an agency somewhere who's designing it, okay? There are jobs for everyone. The person who sets the interface, the UI, how you arrange it, it's a particular job for that. The person who writes the language, okay? Those are some really special people, the writers. Where are they? You know, it's not writing a blog, or it's putting a lot of thought into 30 seconds or 15 or one-liners. Okay, they're all over Twitter. So there's a lot of work in the advertising space. More and more agencies have been established, but they're looking for people because the same people that are rotating all around. Stop going to the banks. The banks are shutting down. Soon you'll have to work in, this is going to take your job. Okay, so there's lots of work in design, there's lots of work in writing, the thinking, the planning, and so on. And we like to say it's sexy. It is hard work, like every other job. It is really hard work. But the benefits are in seeing that the work you've put out there is influencing and changing, behavior. Some of it good, and it's not just even selling Coca-Cola or a product. It's also selling lifestyles. It could be on climate change, or it could be on equality. Okay, that's what advertising does. We're the consultants to the brands that help people influence how the brands or people behave or interact with their brands. Thanks.
I like to look at it so advertising, probably you look at it from what you call the core areas, even though most of us fell into it by accident. But there's a core area, which is the creative writers, etc. And then there's a non-core area. Okay, so an accountant, for instance, is not core to advertising, but can work in an advertising agency. You've got carpenters, welders, depending on the sector of advertising. So we come from what we call below the line advertising, We don't deal with TV, radio, etc. Our core competence lies in developing human interaction, how the brands interact with consumers. And similar to what Ikea described within the mainstream advertising area, we also have client service teams, we have creative teams, we have strategic teams, we have operational teams, etc., etc. Now, within the advertising industry as well, you need psychologists because you need to understand people. What we try to do is try to understand human behavior. What instigates purchase decisions? So why do you buy what you buy? Why do you turn when you turn? What will motivate you to buy? And so in developing a consumer experience, we will look at the whole spectrum of human behavior and then design our campaigns. So our process also starts by either we get a brief from a client or we go chase a brief, which will be done by the client service department. Once the client service team comes back, they would sit with the creative team and the strategic teams within the business and brief them and say, okay, I've got this brief, these are the objectives from the client, this is what they want to achieve, these are the challenges they face. Once that is done, we would move into insights. You cannot develop a campaign without understanding, one, the target market, the motivation for the target market for what they do, and also, most importantly for us, how to reach them. I mean, Andrew spoke about media. Of course, from the media side as well, they will need to understand and say, okay, what programs are people watching? Okay, so who is watching Kunkumbaja? If I'm trying to reach, let's say, from the media side, kids between the ages of, say, and their parents, say 10 to 15 years, is Kunkumbaja the right channel to use? Maybe not. Maybe yes, I don't know. He's got data to support that. I've got data to also support to say, okay, if I want to reach students of, say, 20 to 25 years, where can I reach them? Is it in school? Is it in parties? Where can I reach them? So we would mine all of this data, understanding what we call their touch points. Touch points are basically where you can reach them. So we know where we can reach women. Most importantly, we know where we can reach men. And if you segment it into the different age categories as well, you know that a man of 40 years old probably goes to a different place than a 20-year-old. And so you would segment it and then decide how to tackle it. Then the next part of it is also to say, what can I do that, one, would motivate him to be part of my event, and two, will leave a lasting impression on him. What we do, basically, is to create memorable experiences. We all know that whether you've got a positive experience or a negative experience, it stays with you for life, okay? Whatever the experience is. And so some experiences, depending on how deep and strong they are from childhood, would stay with you forever, and some experiences will fizzle out. Our job is to say, how can we deepen that experience so that it stays with you for life, okay? And that's where the behavioral scientists are needed to understand, okay, what are the triggers in the mind? So how do I use the trigger? How do I use color? So if I have a campaign, let's assume it's an MTN campaign today with you, how do I deepen that experience so much that whenever you see yellow, all you can remember is MTN? Or if it's Maggie, whenever you see yellow and red, all you can think about is Maggie. That's our job at the below the line level. It's say, how do we deepen that experience? How do we create memorable experiences for you? And most importantly, how do we ensure that you share that experience with your friends, your colleagues? I mean, there's research to show that almost everybody has about 7 circles that they revolve in. So you've got your religious people, you've got your old school people, you've got the work people, you've got people you meet, what is the kifid, your social circles, etc. So you've got all these groups that you meet. And it's likely that at least, if you've got a positive experience, you'll probably share it with about 5 of them. And if you've got a negative experience, you share it with 7 and look for additional ones to share with. Marketers, you need client service people. Client service people are the interface between the agency and the clients that we deal with. So they basically are what we call the brand custodians within the business. They need to understand the brand totally. Okay, what is the client thinking? what's the headache that a client has, what's the consumer thinking, and how do I channel all that back into my creative. So you've got the core ones and then the non-core ones. Creative, graphic designers are part of what I would call core to advertising. And as we've all said, I don't think any of us started out saying we wanted to do advertising. I definitely didn't start wanting to do advertising. My first degree was in theater arts, a bit far removed from advertising if you look at it. I know people have done land economy, etc., who are now in advertising. So it doesn't matter what you do, but I think for us, the ingredient to succeed is passion. Passion for what we do. It's a lot of hard work, like my colleagues have said. It's a lot of long hours, especially on the eventing side. I mean, sometimes we run 24 hours, doing setup, etc. And then from there, you're moving to the next event, depending on how huge the event is. So it's a lot of hard work. You must have passion. You must love to work hard as well. And I want to believe that when we party too, we party hard. Thank you.